Alright, picture this. You're deep in an abandoned subway tunnel in the year 2087, the world above. Gone, your current situation. Also not great, because somewhere, somehow, a water main the size of a school bus just burst. And now you've got about 3,000 gallons per minute turning your nice dry tunnel into an underground water park. Except, there are no slides, no lifeguards, and the only pool floaties are rusty barrels that may or may not contain hazardous waste. Now, before we dive in, literally, let's talk about what makes flooded tunnels the absolute worst place to take a swim. First, you've got currents, not the gentle kind from your local pool. We're talking angry, swirling forces of nature that can knock you off your feet faster than you can say, "I should have stayed in the bunker." Second, debris. Old pipes, chunks of concrete, shopping carts from the before times. All of it's floating, spinning, and looking for shins to destroy. And third, darkness. Because of course, the emergency lights stopped working in 2072. Here's the thing though. If water rises faster than your patience, you need tricks, not panic. Panic makes you swim in circles. Panic makes you forget that your backpack can float. Panic makes you do something really stupid, like try to swim against a current that's basically a horizontal waterfall. So let's figure out how to get out of this mess with some dignity intact. And maybe, just maybe, with dry socks, though let's be honest, that ship has sailed. First rule of flooded tunnel survival. Stop moving and start looking. I know. Every instinct in your body is screaming, run. But here's the problem. Running in ankle-deep water in the dark toward you're not sure where is how you end up face first in a pile of rubble, wondering why you didn't listen to the nice voice on the tutorial. So, eyes open, brain on. Let's do this properly. Look at the water flow. Is it coming from one direction like a river? That's actually useful information. Rivers have a source. They also have a destination. You want to move perpendicular to the flow, not against it. Fighting a current is like arguing with the apocalypse. Technically possible, but you're going to lose, and you'll be exhausted when you do. Now scan for debris. Not just the big obvious stuff, but the floaters. See that plastic crate bobbing along? That's your new best friend. Spot a barrel that's sealed tight. Congratulations, you just found yourself a flotation device. Old wooden pallets. Those float too, and they're basically DIY rafts if you're creative enough. The trick is identifying what's buoyant before you need it, because grabbing random objects while treading water is how people accidentally grab rebar instead of rafts. Here's something else people miss. Slopes. Tunnels aren't perfectly flat. There are always subtle inclines, ramps, maintenance platforms. If you can spot a gentle upward slope, that's your golden ticket. Water takes the path of least resistance, which means it flows downhill. You want to go uphill. Even 6 inches of elevation can buy you precious time and weak points. Look for cracks in the walls, spots where the concrete looks crumbly, areas where water is gushing in faster than elsewhere. These aren't escape routes, but they tell you where not to stand, because the last thing you need is a wall collapse, adding buried alive to your list of problems right next to slowly drowning. Oh, and lighting. If you've got any light source, a flashlight, a glow stick, you've been saving for emergencies. Now is the emergency. Use it to scan the ceiling. Sometimes there are markings, old safety signs, or maintenance hatches that only reveal themselves when you actually look up instead of just staring at the rising water in existential dread. The environment is talking to you. It's saying things like, the current is strong here, and this path slopes upward, and, hey, there's a ladder 10 feet to your left. Your job is to listen, because in a flooded tunnel, the difference between surviving and not surviving is often just paying attention to details while everyone else is losing their minds. Okay, so you've observed your environment. You've spotted some useful floating objects. Now comes the fun part. Amateur physics hour. Except the stakes are slightly higher than your high school science class, and the grade you're working toward is not drowning. Let's talk buoyancy. Here's the simple version. Objects that displace more water than they weigh will float. Objects that don't, won't. You, as a human, are borderline. You can float if you relax and let yourself, but the moment you start panicking and flailing like you're fighting invisible bees, you sink. This is why we need helpers. Empty barrels are the gold standard. A sealed 55-gallon drum can support several hundred pounds. If you find one, hug it. Literally wrap your arms around it and let it do the work. Don't try to sit on top of it like it's a mechanical bull. That's a physics problem. You will lose. Instead, drape yourself over it, keep your center of gravity low, and use your legs to kick gently if you need to steer. Plastic crates are next on the hierarchy of amazing flotation devices. Those big industrial ones, the kind that used to hold supplies. Turn one upside down and press it into the water. The air trapped inside creates a pocket of buoyancy. You can lean on it, push it in front of you, even sit on it if you're careful and the water is deep enough. Just don't puncture it or let it fill with water, because then you're just hugging a heavy rectangle. Wooden pallets are everywhere in abandoned industrial tunnels, and they're surprisingly useful. Wood floats, not forever, especially if it's old and waterlogged, but long enough. If you can find 2 pallets, even better. Lash them together with wire, rope, or that bungee cord you've been carrying around for no reason until this exact moment. Boom. You've got a raft. A terrible raft that's going to give you splinters and probably fall apart, but a raft nonetheless. Here's a weird one, your backpack. If it's even remotely waterproof, seal it up tight with air inside. Congratulations, you just made a float. Hold it against your chest or under your arms. It won't support your full weight, but it'll take enough load off that swimming becomes significantly easier. Just, try not to lose your supplies in the process. Trading your food rations for buoyancy is a future you problem. Even clothing can help. If you've got a jacket, zip it up, cinch the bottom tight, and hold the neck closed while you swish it through the air to trap a bubble inside. Then seal the neck and hug it. It's like the world's most pathetic life vest, but it works for a few minutes, long enough to rest, catch your breath, and remember that you're a creative genius for thinking of this. The key to all of this is staying calm and using your brain. Panic makes you forget that physics exists and that you have options. Calm makes you realize that half the garbage floating around you can literally save your life. Plus, there's something deeply satisfying about MacGyvering your survival out of trash and duct tape. All right, you're floating, you're stable, you've made friends with a barrel. Now what? Now we talk about getting out of this watery nightmare before it becomes a permanent swimming pool. First, identify your exits. In any tunnel system, there are multiple ways out, if you know where to look. The main tunnel entrance is obvious, but it's probably underwater by now or blocked by debris. So we get creative. Look for maintenance doors along the walls. These usually lead to side passages, electrical rooms, or storage areas that might have ladders going up. They're marked with faded signs that say things like authorized personnel only, which in the post-apocalypse translates to everyone's authorized because there's no personnel anymore. Ventilation shafts are your secret weapon. Every tunnel has them. They're built into the ceiling or high up on the walls, and they lead to the surface. The problem? They're usually covered with grates or screens. The solution? Most of those grates have been rusting for decades. A solid kick, a pry with a metal bar, or just persistent wiggling can pop them open. Once you're in a vent shaft, it's a vertical climb, but at least you're climbing away from the water instead of swimming in it. High ground is non-negotiable. If you spot a maintenance platform, a catwalk, a ledge, anything elevated, get to it. Even if it's not a direct exit, it buys you time. Water rises at a predictable rate. If you can get 10 feet above the current water level, you've just bought yourself maybe 20 or 30 minutes to reassess, rest, and figure out your next move. Use that time wisely. This is not the moment to take a nap or check if your old phone still works. Now let's talk movement strategy. Slow and cautious beats fast and reckless every single time. In a flooded tunnel, rushing gets you injured. A twisted ankle in knee-deep water might as well be a death sentence, so you move deliberately. Test each step before you commit your weight. Use walls for support. If you've got a stick, a pipe, anything long and sturdy, use it to probe the ground in front of you. Potholes, debris, sudden drop-offs, they're all invisible under murky water. If you have to swim, and sometimes you do, swim smart. Stay near the walls where the current is weaker. Use a side stroke or breaststroke so you can keep your head up and see where you're going. Save your energy. This isn't a race. It's a careful, calculated retreat. And if you've got that flotation device, keep it with you. Even if you're not actively using it, you might need it later. Here's a trick for navigating in darkness. Sound. Water echoes differently in open spaces versus dead ends. Splash the water gently and listen. A sharp, immediate echo means you're near a wall. A longer, more diffused echo means open space. It's not perfect, but it's better than swimming blind into a concrete pillar. And one more thing, mark your path. If you've got chalk, a knife to scratch walls, anything to leave a trail, use it. Flooded tunnels can be disorienting. You don't want to swim in circles and end up back where you started, exhausted and confused. Simple arrows, X marks, anything that says, "I already tried this way," is valuable information. The goal isn't to be a hero. The goal is to be methodical, patient, and alive. Speed is tempting, but strategy is what actually saves you. So let's say you made it. You found a vent shaft. You climbed 40 feet of rusty ladder that definitely should not have held your weight. And you emerged into the wasteland above, soaking wet, covered in questionable tunnel slime, but breathing fresh air. Congratulations, you survived. Now what did we learn? Because survival isn't just about getting lucky. It's about making smart decisions in terrible situations. Lesson 1. Situational awareness beats strength. You didn't muscle your way out of that tunnel. You observed, you adapted, you used what was available. The person who panics and tries to swim against the current, they don't make it. The person who stops, looks around, spots the floating barrel and the maintenance ladder. That person's writing a tutorial about it later. Lesson 2. Improvisation is a survival skill. You didn't have a life vest or a boat. You had garbage and creativity, and somehow that was enough. In the apocalypse, resources are limited. Your ability to look at a plastic crate and think flotation device instead of just trash is what separates survivors from statistics. Lesson 3. .com is a superpower. Every moment you spent not freaking out was a moment you spent solving problems. Fear is natural, panic is a choice, and panic makes you stupid. Calm makes you remember that you can float, that barrels exist, that ventilation shafts lead somewhere useful. Calm keeps you alive. Lesson 4. Humor helps. Yes, even in the middle of a life-threatening flood. When you can look at your situation and think, well, at least I'm getting a free shower, you're maintaining perspective. You're reminding yourself that this is bad, but it's not the end. That mindset, that refusal to give up or give in to despair, that's what carries you through. And lesson 5. Preparation matters, but adaptability matters more. You can't plan for every scenario. You can't predict that a water main will burst while you're scavenging for supplies. But you can train yourself to stay flexible, to think on your feet, or in this case, on your barrel. The person who survives isn't the one with the perfect plan. It's the one who can throw the plan out and make a new one when everything goes sideways. Here's the thing about flooded tunnels, and really about survival in general. It's not about being fearless. It's about being smart, resourceful, and just stubborn enough to refuse to quit. You don't have to be a hero. You just have to be patient, observant, and willing to hug a barrel with no shame whatsoever. And that's it. Your complete guide to not drowning in a flooded post-apocalyptic tunnel. If you make it out dry, consider yourself lucky, blessed, and possibly some kind of water-repelling wizard. If you make it out wet but alive, that's still a win. You've got a story, you've got experience, and you've got the knowledge that when the world literally tries to drown you, you can float your way to safety on a stolen barrel and sheer determination. Will you ever encounter this exact scenario? Probably not. But the principles apply everywhere. Stay calm, observe your environment, use what you have, move with purpose, and never ever underestimate the buoyancy of a well-sealed plastic crate. Now go forth, survivors. May your tunnels stay dry, your barrels stay sealed, and your sense of humor stay intact. Because if the apocalypse has taught us anything, it's that sometimes the only thing standing between you and disaster is the ability to laugh at how absurd everything's become. And hey, at least you learned how to float. That's more than most people can say. Stay safe out there. And maybe avoid tunnels for a while.